I'm Mark Settle. Thank you all for joining me today. We're going to talk about something that's near and dear to the heart of every CIO, which is IT spending. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Trish Bousfield. Trish is the CIO at Syneos Health, if I pronounced that correctly. It's a $5 billion biopharmaceutical company, but Trish has a long and illustrious career in IT. She started with American Express, and she's worked at Pfizer and Zoetis, I believe is the correct pronunciation of another firm that's involved in biopharmaceuticals. So, Trish, maybe you could get us started by just describing Syneos Health in terms of its size and products and customers. I think a lot of our listeners probably don't know what a biopharmaceutical company actually does.
Okay, well, Syneos Health is actually a biopharmaceutical services company. So we're a CRO, which is a clinical research organization, and also commercialization, so CCO. So we provide services to the biopharma industry from lab to life. So everything from the early stage clinical trials through to commercialization and adherence of drugs. We provide those services to companies. So we're primarily a services company in that space.
So it's a B2B kind of a model.
Yes. So our products are our services.
And I also noticed that you had the CIO job there for about a year as of February of this year, just when the whole Corona crisis, kind of showed up. So that was your 1 year anniversary experience. Yes. to have to go through that. So how did the COVID phenomena, or business disruption actually impact your business in terms of routine operations?
Yeah. Well, because we're a services company, we're very heavily people-oriented globally. So we operate in well over 70 countries, and we have about 24,000 employees, but also a lot of contractors. We have people in multiple countries and multiple sites, and we're probably about about maybe 40% remote workers just normally as part of business, and on any given day with people traveling, we could be as high as 60% remote. So we are used to dealing with remote workers. What had to happen, of course, was to take everybody who doesn't generally work remote and move them out of the offices very quickly. For us, we saw the impact happening in Asia first, as we started to kind of monitor our network services. We could see that we were starting to get close to capacity around our VPN and network in the Asia areas. And so the network team immediately started to kind of look to boost our capacity in Asia and Europe and in US, as well as move capacity around where we had spare capacity. And they did a lot of upgrades, and just in time, because as we hit March, they had just completed all their upgrades, and we actually found that we were very capable of absorbing that huge increase in capacity as people went mobile and onto external networks, then trying to get back into our network. So it was actually a very successful migration from a networking perspective. Equipment-wise, most people already had laptops that they could take with them. There were a few challenges in some areas where they do have a few desktops, which we had to be a little creative about. And then, of course, as we got deeper into COVID, actually getting new laptops to new employees as we continue to onboard new employees as we move through COVID, that became challenging, especially in particular countries where there were lockdowns and logistical issues, and we had to start to leverage more kind of Citrix and other remote kind of ways of bringing BYOD into our organization. And we also accelerated some of our security programs that we were planning on for endpoints as a result of that, because taking everybody virtual significantly increased our endpoint security, potential for issues. And so we accelerated some programs there to monitor more closely and protect our endpoints.
What about in terms of customers? Did customer expectations or behaviors change as a result of the crisis?
Of course, we're all trying to go remote as well at the same time. In some cases, we actually had to help our customers because they couldn't facilitate the laptops to groups like our full service, where they might provide their own equipment, where they like us to work on their equipment, where they were unable to do that. So we've actually, stepped up and helped them. We stepped and helped some vendors who weren't able to get laptops to people who didn't work on a normal basis outside of the office and didn't have them. So, we partnered with those companies to get them working so they could continue to support us. I think on the customer side, things slowed down a bit as they tried to go virtual and they looked at the impact. I mean, obviously, clinical trials are very much site-based with CRAs visiting sites and investigators at sites. Well, once there was a lockdown, you can't do that. So, we had to find some new methods to do remote monitoring, and for some trials that was accelerated quite quickly. Other trials like oncology, it's very much harder to do that. So yes, there definitely is an impact through the clinical trial space, and I think it will definitely impact how the pharmaceutical companies look moving forward as to how they can do more remote-based monitoring and more real-world evidence trials to speed things up in situations like this where site-based trials are interrupted for whatever reason.
That's a good segue, because what I want to talk about is future spending plans. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of the articles in the press where there have been forecasts or predictions that IT spending will be reduced or cut back in many, many cases. I think PwC published a survey they conducted of CFOs, and there was sort of a near universal agreement that there'd be a reduction overall in IT spending across a variety of companies of like 10%, 10 to 15%. But in my personal experience, I've talked to a lot of different CIOs, and quite frankly, they're all over the map. Some people are forced to institute some pretty deep and draconian cuts, and in other cases, I think spending is actually accelerating them for certain things. So, in your situation, as you look at spending for the rest of the year, you think the overall level will stay the same, but priorities will change, or is there going to be an overall change in the level of spending?
Well, so a little bit of both. I think as we went into COVID, because people didn't really know what was going to happen with revenue, we had to immediately kind of go into some cost containment modes to protect our EBITDA. So, we delayed some projects, we went and renegotiated some contracts, etc., to try and make sure that we could protect our Q2 and Q3. But at the same time, our strategies really haven't changed. So we may have delayed some of those strategies, but I think in the long run, we're not expecting to see a decline in IT spend. If anything, I would expect us to increase technology spend as we move more towards more virtual trial technology. We're doing a lot around the automation space. We're bringing a lot more into data and intelligence and insights from data. So we're expanding our capabilities around AI and ML, as well as all the other digital technologies. So that was already part of our plan to do more of that over the next 3 years as part of our strategic plans. So we expect that to continue, but we did, for a short period of time, go into a more conservative kind of spending approach while we monitor the situation to see potentially what might happen. So it's kind of a combined thing. So as a result of that, I would anticipate that we would see some reductions in spend this year. And some of those were just things that we were planning to do anyway. Others were things that were kind of temporary in nature. But next year we are anticipating that we go more back to our business as usual with our strategic planning process as we usually do it, and investing heavily in technologies to continue to move the whole industry forward.
So just to kind of hark back to the comments you made before about the clinical trials changing, possibly becoming more virtual over time, et cetera. We're in June. So in a couple of months, we'll all start making our plans for fiscal 2021. So are there a couple of initiatives, and I'm not trying to lead the witness here, but are there a couple of initiatives that now you'll either accelerate or really start to do your homework now to get ready to propose in that next budget cycle that, again, weren't part of the strategy over the course of the last year, or maybe they were, but they're much more prominent and you're really going to accelerate them going into next year?
I actually don't think that there's anything that's more prominent than it already was. I think that as we executed on the last 2 years worth of strategy, so there's some new things that we had to deprioritize based on investment levels and capacity to do that type of thing, and that will start to become more important. So virtual trials, as an example, and who we want to partner with and how we bring a virtual trial capability into our ecosystem. And we've done it before, but we want to do it in a more operational way. was something we were planning to do, but certainly it's higher on everybody's radar, so it might get greater priority that it was able to get in previous years when we were still working through our integration. I mean, as you are already aware, Inventive Health merged with INC Research, and we've spent at least 2.5 years doing a heavy integration of our technology and our backbone, and we continue to finish the tail end of that. And that kind of prevents you from doing a lot of new and exciting investments, but we're moving out of that, and we've already in 2020 made some heavy investments in some new technologies around our commercial space and our omni-channel marketing, and we'll be starting to kind of drive more now into the virtual clinical trial space, potentially real world evidence. So yes, right now that planning process is going ahead, and the business is looking at where it wants to prioritize its strategic investments, and that I'm sure in turn will result in technology spend, as most things do these days.
Well, it's reassuring talking to one more CIO who's pretty much steady on the course of the strategies that have been put in place before. Trish, thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy. This has been an imposition. Really appreciate you sharing the perspective of what's happening there, and best of luck going forward.
Thank you, Mark. It was a pleasure talking to you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.